Hi everyone, this is Lothar. I'm here to talk to you about the new content scanning capabilities in File Reporter 3.5. To better understand these new capabilities, let's take a moment to review the architecture. This is the architecture for File Reporter 3 and prior, and we're going to focus on specifically the agents because that is the most important piece that has changed. These agents in File Reporter 3 and prior could run either directly on the servers or act as proxy agents and connect to remote servers or data stores. They collected all the metadata and then uploaded that to the engine, which stored the data in the database that allowed you to report on later. In File Reporter 3.5, we introduced a number of new components. If we start with the agents, we have new agents, Agent FC, that run in addition to the existing Agent FS. The Agent FC is what will scan inside of files looking for specific search strings that are part of the content scanning. The other new component is the message broker and then a manager FC. These two components will dispatch the indexing requests to the various agent FCs that exist inside of your environment to ensure that all the content gets appropriately indexed. Here you can see the requirements for the new agent FC. These should be considered minimum requirements. Indexing, documents, and content inspection can be a very CPU intensive process, especially if you're doing things like OCRing images and looking for content inside of images. Content analysis is typically an on-demand process, and therefore you do not need multiple dedicated agent FCs. If these are virtual machines, you can power them up and deploy them as needed, but then reclaim those resources when your processing is done. For the new manager, you only need one of those, and fortunately the resource requirements are such that this can easily run on your existing engine. So let's take a look at how you would actually do content scanning within File Reporter. When you log into File Reporter 3.5, you'll notice a new menu option for file content. One of the first tabs under that is classifications, and there are a number of default classifications that have been set within the product. However, you are free to create your own. Looking at one of these, you can see the name for, in this case, restricted, a level, and a description. At this point in time, these are completely arbitrary and you can make these whatever you would like. The next tab is category, and once again, you can assign arbitrary names and descriptions to these. The next tab is search patterns, and this is where we will start to bring together the categories and classifications. If we take a look at these, the first one, American Express, you can see the name and the classification and category. Those are drop downs to the two that we just described, the classifications and category lists. And then we have a match confidence, and this is how confident are you in your search string whether or not this is in fact an American Express number. And if we jump down to the actual search string, you can see this is a Microsoft.NET regex expression. We could search for simply a 15-digit number, and is that an American Express number? Well, it could be, but it might not be. By creating a more elaborate regex expression, we can put some rules in here to define the types of numbers that we're looking for to make sure that we do in fact have an American Express number. There are also some regex options here, case insensitive, and those kinds of things that you can define as well as part of this search pattern. If you're new to regex expressions, there are a lot of resources on the internet. Simply do a search for Microsoft.NET regex. You should specify Microsoft.NET, as there are different versions of regex, so you want specifically the Microsoft version. And here's a document directly from Microsoft giving you all of the details. But like I said, there are a lot of resources out there to help you develop these regex expressions. Again, if you're new to regex expressions, you'll find a lot of tools out there. And this one in particular is a testing tool which validates your regex expression. So here, this is my American Express number, and as I've mentioned, I've increased the confidence level by putting some rules in place to make sure that it is in fact an American Express number. And in this case, I'm looking for a number that begins with 3 and then has a 4 or a 7 next, and so on, as that is what an American Express number looks like. I can put in some test numbers, and when I test it, it will tell me whether or not it actually matches the expression and is a hit or not. Now that we've got some things defined that we're looking for, credit card numbers and so on, it's time to create a job to actually look for that information on the system. When we create a new job, one of the first things we have to do is add the target path. So where do we want to search for files that contain whatever the search string is that we're looking for? So we add the volumes or the shares to the list. Then we add the search patterns that we're looking for. In this case, we'll add all of the credit cards that we have defined. And then lastly, we can set some filters such as a maximum file size, file types, and so on. Depending on your search criteria and the importance of that information to you, this may or may not be desirable. Once you have your jobs defined and submitted, then you sit back and wait. Again, if we go back to the architecture, it is the agent FCs that are doing the scanning of all of the content as defined by the job. So it will search through every file on those shares or volumes that you've defined. Depending on the amount of data that you have and the amount of agent FCs, this could potentially take a while. When the job is complete, however, you will see the results under search results, and in this case they are presented as a CSV file for you with the results of those search criteria. When we look at one of those CSV files in Excel in this case, you can see the results. So you see the full path, the scan time, the classification and category that we've assigned per the criteria as defined in the job, some information about the size, file size, modify time, the search pattern where we got a hit, the pattern string, so the regex expression, what options were set, and the number of hits that we got from that file. So from all of the files on the file system, we now have a summarized list of all the offending files that contain, in this case, credit card information. You can now either process this manually or use something like the data owner client in File Dynamics to process this data further. I'm going to show you how to use the data owner client in File Dynamics to clean up those files or move them to a secure location on the network. But before leaving File Reporter, I just want to show you this screen for the scan agents. These again are the agent FCs that are out there. In this case, in my demo, I only have one of those, but I can see whether or not OCR is enabled. OCR is enabled during install time. It's a checkbox during the install, but if it is enabled, Agent FC will actually OCR any images that it comes across and look for whatever the pattern is, in this case, credit card information. All right, so let's switch over to File Dynamics and clean up some of those files that we found that contain the credit card information. I'm going to go ahead and start my File Dynamics Data Owner client. I then will find my CSV file that contains the list of all of the files, the offending files that contain credit card information, and I simply drag and drop it into the data owner client. This will open up a workload for me and allow me to clean up those files that contain the credit card information. I have the option to copy those files to another location, which would make a bad situation worse by creating copies of all of those files that contain credit card information. I could move them if I have a secure location that is restricted, has restricted access, maybe, and is allowed to have confidential information such as this on the share. I could move those files there, or I can delete those files from my network altogether. These files contain credit card information. It's against the rules of our business to contain that or to keep that information for our customers, so we're just going to go ahead and delete it. I'm not going to proceed with any action at this point in time. I do have a couple of other videos, which we will link to in the description, that show you more details on how the data owner client works, and specifically the workload component of the data owner client. But as you can see, I simply highlight the files, make my choice, copy, move, delete, and submit the job to File Dynamics, and it will clean up those files for me. And with that, I want to thank you very much for your time and your interest today. If this topic is of interest to you or important to you, please subscribe to our channel and you'll be notified of future updates.